She's the Boss Livestream show. This show is all about me interviewing female founders and women doing extraordinary things in business. And I'm so excited to have Penny Locaso here with me today. We actually met when she was doing some research on female founders earlier this year. And she's so interesting, I had to interview her. So, welcome, Penny.
Thanks for the invitation, Jules.
Oh,
It's
you
an honour
sound
to
so.
be here on a Monday morning.
I know you sound so calm and relaxed compared to me. So, let's start off by telling everybody what it is. I've done a little kind of thing in the chat saying you're an author, you're a podcaster, you've done research, you're a scientist. But you tell everybody, what's the name of your business to start with?
Yeah, so my business is called Hacking Happy Co.
Okay.
And the reason it's got that name is because, as most founders, it's been an evolution.
Yes.
So where I am now is not where I
Yeah,
started,
well,
but
let's
what
go
I
back to
do,
where you started and then, well, actually, no, say where you are now, and then I'm going to get you to go back and tell me where you started.
sure. Um, So where am I now? So at the moment, what I do is I help women change the world without self-doubt, and that manifests in many different things. I'm a big fan of a portfolio career because I get bored if I do one thing all the time. So I am an international speaker. I'm a published author. I am a mentor and coach to women around the globe. I am a published researcher, and that has definitely become a huge part of what I do because I'm a
Right.
big fan of evidence-backed interventions that enable people to unlock potential that they couldn't see themselves. But
Love
I'm
it.
also a student of psychology. I'm doing honours in psych at the moment. I've just finished studying trauma with Dr. Gabor Mate.
Wow.
And I'm a mum and a passionate yogi and a hiker.
Right.
That's me.
So what do you do the rest of the time? My goodness, that doesn't sound like enough.
Yeah, it's funny. My sister and my dad always say to me, I'm exhausted just hearing what you do. It's funny, we all operate differently. I'm very calm. I'm very zen.
You
I just
are.
spend a life doing things that I love. And so it never feels like work.
Yeah, I know that feeling, and I know those questions too. But let's go back then. Why don't you tell us about your career and how it's unfolded? I'm always fascinated with that story.
So I feel like I've had two lives.
Right?
So I spent 16 years as a senior executive working for Shell in oil and gas until the
Wow,
age of
wasn't
30.
expecting that.
And so I had a wonderful career. I was extremely successful. And I got to the age of 39. I had a son who was 3 years old. And I'll never forget, I walked out into the backyard one afternoon and I'd been questioning a lot up until that point. I was completely exhausted. And I would say unfulfilled, like looking for more meaning in my work.
What were you doing? Can I
So,
ask what you were doing at Shell?
yeah, so I'd done many jobs, but the last job I had, I was sent over to Perth in the oil and gas boom to manage the cultural evolution of the organisation as they grew from 100 to 1,000 staff.
Oh my
So I
gosh,
had a
right.
blank canvas and a budget to basically integrate 900 new staff into the culture of the organisation.
Bloody hell. Okay.
Dream job.
Right, but you suddenly find it's not fulfilling you really.
No, I think the career had been amazing and I love the people I worked with. But I walked out in the backyard one afternoon and my 3-year-old son, I said to him, come hang out, let's do something fun in the kitchen. And he said to me, I can't, mum, I'm too busy.
Oi, ow, ow,
And
ow.
I just went, what am I doing?
Yeah.
And it was like, as I say, there was all of this stuff that I was feeling, but that was the mic drop moment. And that was the beginning of the next life. So within 7 months, I turned my life completely upside down in pursuit of happiness. I left a 16-year career at the top of my game.
Wow.
I relocated my family from Perth back to Melbourne, left an 18-year relationship and started my own purpose-driven company with no idea what I was doing.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it when you just kind of, take one footstep in front of the other and suddenly go, bloody hell, look what I've done. So, what a massive change.
It was, but you know what? I have no regrets.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing other than having my son that I've ever done in my life.
Wow. Okay. So, what did you decide to do from that moment on? So, I mean, oil and gas and HR don't really lend themselves to some of the things you've got on. So, how has it all unraveled? Not unraveled. That's the wrong word for it. Unfolded.
Yeah, so even though I was in lifestyle change, I was never in HR. I was always a commercial person. So I
Okay.
was always working in sales and marketing and just evolved into program management. So my expertise were in helping people change and transform. So what I started with, and this will be really helpful for a lot of those founders that are listening, that are still trying to find their way.
Yeah.
So I took $10,000 of my own money and I built an online platform to help small business owners get better at working on the business rather than in it.
Nice.
And within 6 months, I basically put the whole lot in the bin because once I launched it, all I kept getting asked to do was, can you come and speak to our people about how you turned your life upside down in pursuit of happiness?
Yeah. Right.
So I listened to the call and I lent into what I was being called to, and that was the beginning.
Right. And then, so what happened after that? So you started speaking and
I started
clearly went,
speaking.
oh my God, what I've set up is not right for me. So where did you go next?
Correct. And so I had to let go of that and the money, like just complete throw the money away. That's what it felt like. Not now. But I realized when I kept getting asked about how I turned my life upside down in pursuit of happiness, that there was a lot of people getting paid a lot of money that weren't happy in their careers. And this
Yeah.
was 10 years ago. So, this is more popular now than it was then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I took a massive risk, and what I did was I started reaching out to all of these females that had left their corporate jobs, started purpose-driven businesses, and I asked them to come on panels with me. And we ran these events all around Australia with all of these, I would say they were early stage influencers.
Yeah.
And we called it Ditch the Daily Grind and Leap into a Career You Love. And it was one of the smartest things I did without realizing it because it attracted all of these professional women
Yeah.
across a multitude of industries. And it started to establish my profile as someone who wanted to make change, wanted to support women, even though I didn't know what the next iteration of that was.
Yeah.
And it built my credibility by association with all of these amazing female entrepreneurs. So it was a gift that gave in multiple ways.
Yeah, and I mean, another little gift, and I always say to people to run their own events because it does, if you're starting from scratch, start building a bit of an email database for you as well. Just
Yeah.
another little gift, but you start to know who's interested in what it is that you're talking about. So, how did that turn? What I'm really interested in is taking this story to the point where you and I met when you're doing, I think that was for your PhD. I'm not sure what it was for, but the research.
No, so I haven't started my PhD yet, but
Okay.
I'm a bit of an obscure psychology student. So I'm someone who is very passionate about applied learning because what I see in my business is a lot of women who over credential themselves out of fear of putting themselves out into the world and experimenting their way to the impact that they seek. And so what they do is they spend thousands of dollars on credentials without the application.
Yeah.
So what I do with my psychology studies is I have been taking what I've learned and applying it through doing my own research to the point where I'm now in a debate with my university because they won't let me do the research I want to do for my thesis next year because it's not standard that students do what I do.
Right. Isn't that the whole point of universities to be trying new things? But maybe not.
Well, the argument I
Interesting.
get back is the intent of your thesis, you'll love this, the intent of your thesis is not for you to enjoy the research, it's for you to learn how to do research.
Right.
But the thing is, I've had work published in the American Journal of Psychology Consulting. I'm literally wrote up the paper yesterday to be submitted to the Qualitative Psychology Journal in America, which is the next piece of
So it's
research
all
I've
just
done.
it's all just them and red tape and bureaucracy, and this is not the way it's done.
It's exactly that. And it's extremely frustrating when you are working on things that are actually helping women change their lives and their careers for the better because
Yeah.
it's holding back progress.
And then, and let's just while you're talking about that, I wouldn't mind touching on the number of people that are out there promising things to women everywhere that have no qualifications, no lived
Oh my God.
experience. And there's so many women that I am coming across who say, I need to do something, so I'll become a life coach or a business coach. And you go, but you haven't even run a business yourself, never mind teaching other people. So, very hard to get that cut through to show your integrity when there are so many people that are not quite there yet, but saying that they are.
So I don't think it's hard. What I think it is it's a long game. And I
Yeah.
think that we are wired for the quick fix. And so everyone feels like they have to be the thing overnight. And
And
it's
yeah.
extremely problematic. And it's why we have so many people out there saying, you know what, I'll make you $500,000 in 5 minutes because I did it for myself. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Now show me how you've been able to replicate that success across a multitude of people, because that to me is evidence that you have something that is credible and can be applied to many different human lives, because we all live different lives, we all have different capabilities. But what you find with many of these people is you scratch the surface, they can't do that. So I'm very interested in the person that has played the long game, that's
Yeah.
actually invested in skills over time, applied learning, and some credentialing.
Nice. Yeah, no, I think that's very true. I mean, even when I talk to women about raising their profile, which is what I guess I do on the side, I'm like, it's a 3 year, you're not going to suddenly become, really well known with loads of followers. It takes time. People need to see you're real and get that consistent message. So I love what it
So
is that you
true.
do. So tell us a little bit about the research and then I'll go back to the questions I was going to ask you before, but I'm fascinated by all of it.
So the research has become an obsession to the point where even when I just say that, I still get goosebumps. And I've been working on this heart and soul for the last 4 months.
Right.
So I have spent, oh God, I've done over 300 depth interviews with high performing women across entrepreneurship and executive over the last 3 years.
Wow.
And I did advanced stats about 4 months ago. I got a HD and I was like, oh my God, I'm good at this. And I actually like it, which I never thought would be the case. And partner that with, off the back of those 300 interviews, I started to realize that whenever I spoke to women about being an expert and owning the fact that they were an expert, they got this ick.
All this kind of, ooh, I don't know whether I should really say that about myself.
Or if I call myself an expert, like people think I'm a bit of a wanker, or, like it's not true. And I was like, and the women I was speaking to, I was like, oh my God, like I look at you, you are an
I know.
expert. Okay. And so I got really curious and I decided to do a piece of research to understand how a woman's relationship with the word expert impacts her ability to become one.
Okay.
Because what happened was I dug into the literature when I had this idea and looked at all of the academic articles around being an expert, what it meant, how you became one, and women as experts.
Yes.
And there was no research that spoke to this. And my hypothesis was that most women have a negative relationship with the word expert, which creates an unconscious barrier to them actually stepping in and owning their expertise, which is why less than 30% of voices on stages around the world are female experts, and less than 14% of voices as experts in the media are women, which impacts power, policy,
Yes.
influence, like all of this stuff.
And you can add to that the stat I found last Thursday, which is that only 15% of panels feature women, which we kind of
Yep.
know. I guess I kind of knew anecdotally, but wow, that stat is so low.
Which, I mean, we're 50% of the population,
I know,
but our voices are heard less
and
than
most
30% of the time.
yeah, and so many women are expert at what they do and hold back, and yet there are so many men, God love them, who would be happy to call themselves an expert anytime, whether they are or they're not. It's that
Absolutely.
weird women thing again, playing with our own heads.
Without a doubt. And so I interviewed 21 women
Yeah.
and asked them about their relationship with the word expert, and the insights were profound. So it was a qualitative research piece. I've written a white paper which is called Hidden Figures: Where Are All the Female Experts?
I saw you
You can
posted
jump
about
on.
that last night on LinkedIn and was like, yay, I'm glad I'm interviewing her today.
And it's gone nuts. Like the themes that have emerged, the responses from women, they're like, oh my God, now I understand like how this word is impacting my ability to be the thing that I want to be. Because most women are driven by wanting to
Give
share
back.
their knowledge, to help others,
Yeah.
yeah, live meaningful lives or to make society a better place.
Yes.
So they're driven by impact. But what they don't realize is that if you don't own your expertise, if you don't position yourself as an expert, your ability to have that impact is stifled.
Yeah.
So the research shares with them what are the barriers, what are the 4 things that hold us back, and then there's a whole host of recommendations for women who want to have an impact, for leaders who want to elevate women who want to have an impact,
Yeah.
and for conference organisers and media professionals or people in power in the media to actually give women more freaking opportunities
Yeah.
to own their expertise and to practice them.
That, well, it's the practicing as well, which is part of the reason why I set up women speakers, because
Yeah.
there are, and out of the 2,500 women that I've got in those groups, 15% of them consider themselves experts. 15% say, I don't know anything, I just want to learn to speak. And a whopping 40% of them want to have any opportunity to get up and share what they know, and they're just not being given the opportunities.
Yeah, well, that came out of the research. Women, 2 things women said. They said, one, there's a lack of diverse female role models on stages. And
Yep.
as an international speaker, I mean, I know this. Normally, I'm surrounded by men, and when I'm not, we're all white women, right? There's
Yeah.
not, and not even just white. It's also shape and
I
size.
was
Like,
going to
there's not a
say
lot of,
it's slim, gorgeous looking, super intelligent white women. So it's like
yeah,
it becomes that, which is one of my things, is like, let's get normal people, have fat and thin and tall and short
yeah.
and all different skin colors, all different proclivities, all that kind of thing. Anyway, it takes people speaking about it for the change to happen. So good on you
Yeah,
for
and
doing
it's
that.
the old adage, right? If we can't see it, we can't be it.
Absolutely.
And
And
we
that is
still
so
have a
true.
lack of diversity.
Yeah. So true. And yet we don't have any lack of diversity with men, which is why men in their 50s, 60s, 70s are happy to get up on stages, and they're happy to, and are often chosen for things, I think,
Mm.
whereas the woman has given up by that stage, or a lot of. I think that that's changing. But
Well, the other thing that the research shows, and again, this is for your listeners, you're right, there is a lack of opportunity. But what we also find is even when women are well established experts, when given the opportunity, often they will say they're not the best person for the job, that there's someone that's got more expertise. And I'm just gobsmacked. But we're talking about, doctors,
yeah.
PhD students that do this.
Yeah, there's a whole confidence thing, and I know that confidence has become very trendy, and there's lots of confidence coaches and things like that. But there is definitely something in it that
Yeah.
women in general are lacking the confidence in their own ability, which I guess we all want to change. Make people realize that, I mean, I've done PR for a guy who owned a bedding shop, and we put him out as as a sleep expert. He knows all the different kinds of beds, he knows the different positions people sleep in. It's the word expert that people get hung up on. So let's talk a little bit more about you, though. Can you talk to me about what actual programs you have, or how does someone work with you?
Mm. So I have a very small group of one-on-one clients, private clients, which are women who are wanting to make significant impact, as I said, like change the world, or change their own sort of community or their business, as in
Yeah.
they work for a company. And so I help them scale their impact. I also have a new ecosystem or group program that's opening up for applications at the end of this month called Impact Makers, which is all about teaching women who struggle to own their voice due to, self-doubt,
Yes.
but really want to step into elevating their impact, but they don't feel expert enough. So this is like foundations of impact making. So what can I teach you 10 years in? And I've now created, off the back of the research, which is amazing, I've created an impact expert framework based on what women tell me they look for in experts.
Yeah, fantastic.
So that's launching February next year, but it's selling this year.
Yep.
And then obviously I do a lot of speaking for large corporations, big conferences. I love to write and I do my podcast. So people can definitely access free resources via my website, be it the podcast or a whole host of other valuable tools that they can download for nothing.
Right. Amazing. And so, can you tell me a story or two of working with a woman who wants to create impact and how that kind of looks and what results you've got or what results they've managed to get? I love these stories.
It's funny, no one ever, I have a whole, like 3 pages of case studies on my website, because this is the other thing. When you're looking to invest in someone like myself, do your due diligence. You want to see
Absolutely.
evidence of impact, right? Because too many people come to me and say they've dropped a bomb on a coach that delivered no results.
Yeah.
So I think of a beautiful human called Hazio, and she's Singaporean, and she
Yeah.
has a daughter who has severe, what would you say, a severe disability in terms of physically and mentally.
Yeah.
And so she went and learnt about neurobiology and how to help children like her daughter maximize their potential.
Right.
And so she is now a therapist coach for parents of neurodivergent children, but often severely neurodivergent
Yeah.
and physically impaired, and helps those parents, works with those parents to help their children realize their potential and feel a sense of belonging, because often the parents don't feel they belong and the children struggle to belong because of their diversity.
Yeah.
So we worked together to look at her business because she was completely burnt out and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And we we looked at all of her programming and we stepped back and said, right, what is the impact that she wants to have? Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we enable that impact in a way that allows her to sustain, because she was burnt out?
Yes.
And how do we do it in a way that enables many people, because many people were coming to her, to access her skills without having to do one-on-one?
Yeah.
So we undertook a research process with her existing clients to understand what they
Nice.
loved about her work and what they felt they needed and what they were challenged with. And from there, we built a product which was all about how she could create an online community for her, because she could only take a limited number of one-on-one clients, and start to deliver through large-scale workshops. So we developed different products
Yeah.
that enabled her to reach more people but work less hours.
That's got to
We
be
were
a
also
win.
able to double her prices overnight. Because if
Wow.
there's one thing I have learned about women, so if
Underpricing.
we doubt ourselves, we severely, when we are good at what we do, and she was highly credentialed, severely undercharged.
Yeah. Well,
So
tell me
she is
about
now,
doubling prices overnight, because I think there'd be women listening, and I know I've done that in the past, and it actually wasn't the, oh my God, everybody peels off that I thought it would be. It actually meant that I attracted a different caliber of client. And weirdly, when it was $500 a month, people were peeling off all the time. When it was $1,000 a month, they all stuck.
because they value it more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm not, like we were saying before, I'm not saying go on, put your prices up overnight, okay?
No.
There is
And
what
have some
we
rigor
did was
behind it.
correct, we looked at people that were in her industry doing similar things. And what was interesting about Hazio was that what she did was the way that she treated her patients or her clients was completely different, and she had amazing results and a lot of them, and it's why her clients didn't leave.
Right.
But she had no capacity to take anyone new. So we created a means for the ones who couldn't afford her one-on-one to actually be able to work with her in a group setting.
Yep,
And
nice.
then we made the one-on-one the higher price point.
Yeah, which makes sense.
She didn't lose any clients. She actually grew her business and created space for herself to actually go for a walk on the beach every day. Like the foundations of her being able to sustain, we could bring back in by the space that was created.
Wow. Wow, Penny, that's a great story. Have you got one more? We've only got probably another few minutes, but I love hearing these stories. Tell me about another one.
Oh, so
Choose
there's
one.
this gorgeous woman called Alex Bukowski, and I'm going to say her last name because you could go and follow her on LinkedIn. She is doing great things. So
Yeah,
Alex and I met when she was 6 months out of leaving a very successful career in HR at Rio Tinto.
yeah,
And she heard me on a podcast. She signed up for my coaching and we did the same sort of thing. So she started, basically, she left HR and just started consulting in HR. So
right.
she did the same thing.
Yeah,
And I
same.
said, why did you leave? And she said, because I want to have an impact. And I said, but you're doing the same thing. And she's like, it was like that mic drop moment. So
Yeah,
I always start with what is the impact you want to make on who and why the hell do you give a shit? Why do
yes,
you care about this thing? Yep. And so from there, we build, okay, so what's the vision in the next 2 years? Because I think if you go 5 to 10, the reality is so much is going to change. It's a waste of time.
yeah, yeah,
And then we say, okay, so what are the goals then, say, for the next 12 months? So we bring it back further. And then we say, okay, we know who we want to work with, why we want to work with them. Let's create a problem statement hypothesis. Like, what do we think the pain is of this group of people that we want to treat? And then we go out and do research to prove or disprove that hypothesis, and we build a product around it. So Alex and I did that. This was probably 18 months ago now. Alex, since then, has grown a very successful coaching business. She also wanted to be a speaker.
yeah.
So I supported her in starting to learn some basic skills in that area. Just last week, she spoke at South by Southwest.
Oh
So
my
we're not
God,
talking.
fantastic.
And she's also now in partnership off the back of credentialing herself, which was another area we looked at, credentialing herself in flow state, which is a positive psychology methodology, which is phenomenal around how we get into that state where we're challenged and doing meaningful work and completely, undistracted by the world so that we can create really high quality output. She's partnered with the guru of flow in Australia, and they now are in his business called Flow Centre together, and she's a flow centre expert.
Wow.
So look her up. She's phenomenal. She is doing the work, and she has completely transformed her life in 2 years.
Wow, what a great inspirational story. And it's so true. I mean, I've worked with so many women now who also want to have impact. And one of the things is you can't sit in the shadows that I say to people. If you want to have impact, you have to have an element of influence and power. So whether you call yourself an expert, you get up on stages, you run a podcast, you start applying for awards, it's all part of the same thing that, and don't and one of the things I say to people around the factor is take the focus off yourself and think of yourself as a role model. And all of a sudden, I find with women, if they think they're helping other people, it immediately sits with them in a far more comfortable way. So
I
it's
think I could not agree with you more. And I think the best advice I ever got was when I got my first international speaking gig, and it was for bookings.com, massive company, 3,000 people in Amsterdam. I was like, this is a joke. How am I even
oh
getting
my
this, right?
god, yeah,
And I was like, I wasn't going to tell them this, but I was like, this is so good, I do it for free, right? And they're
yeah,
typical woman. And I had no idea what to charge. And I had a coach at the time, and I said to her, how do I even price this? And she said to me, what is it worth? And I said, well, it's 5 days of my time, not to mention the creation of the talk, blah, blah, blah. And so I pulled out the number. I said, but that's insane. And
and they
she said
paid
to
it.
me, if you can't do it for yourself, you have to do it for every woman coming after you.
Oh, see, I'm getting goosebumps now.
And so I put in my request, and this was 7 years ago, for $17,500,
Oi,
which back
right?
then, yep.
It's like 50 grand
And
now.
they came back and they didn't bat an eyelid. And I was on my way to Amsterdam 8 weeks later.
And how was it talking in front of 3,000 people?
I would say now it's like, well, I mean, you know what? It was an adrenaline rush.
I bet.
But now it doesn't matter whether it's 5 people or 3,000 people. It's like for me, if there's one person in that room whose life is better as a result of, whatever I share, then the work is worth it. It's meaningful.
I love that. That's a really good way to get your head into the right space. Penny, you're so amazing. If somebody wants to work with you, what is the best way to get hold of you? I'm looking for sort of socials and websites, not phone numbers.
I don't
I'm
think
thinking
I've
of
ever.
phone numbers and I'm like, this is going to go all over the internet.
So you'll find me on my website, hackinghappy.co,
Yeah.
or I'm prolific on LinkedIn. So just look me up on my name, Penny Locaso, connect with me, and yeah, let's start a conversation.
Oh, Penny, you're so amazing. Thank you so much for doing this interview. I have loved every second of everything that you've said and clearly could sit down and do a 2 hour interview with you, but we've run out of time. I just want to say to anybody who's watching this, if you're interested in being part of a group that supports female founders and connects them and helps them become more visible, please check out she'sthebossgroup.com. We also have events up and down the east coast of Australia, and I'd love to meet you. You can connect with me on LinkedIn or join the Facebook She's the Boss group, which is very engaged. I also coach women in how to have influence, and I'm a mentor and advisor. And last but definitely not least, we've just started a directory at womenspeakers.com.au. So please go and check it out. And if, as Penny and I have been talking about, you are one of those people who's looking for women because you've got mainly men on the stage, go there. No more excuses. Penny, thank you so much. I can't wait for meeting you in person at some stage.
Jules, thank you so much for having me. Can I just acknowledge how important the work is that you are doing and how much heart and soul I know from the people that connected us that you put into your community and making a difference. So, on behalf of the women I know you have a huge impact on, I just want to say a massive thank you. And, without women like you doing what you do, we will never be able to close these alarming statistics and enable more women to have the impact that they seek. So, thank you.
Thank you. Straight back at you too. I know we now sound like a mutual admiration society, but I really appreciate that too. Okay, so stopping that. Where are you, Penny? Where do you live?